But I hated that part of myself too. I hated that I hated myself. I was like, I just wish I didn't feel this way. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and if you're new here, welcome. Today is gonna be another one of my deep videos, or not so deep, but just of my sharing my personal experience so that hopefully someone out there can benefit and be liberated from what I was liberated from, which was self-hatred and low self-esteem and being super critical of myself, which can kind of morph as perfectionism. So if you want to learn more about my journey and my story, please keep on watching. So for starters, growing up, I was very confident, I would say, when I was like in 5th grade, etc. Like I was fine. However, my middle school journey for me was very interesting because first of all, that's when I started to believe in Christ and I became a Christian during that time. And a lot of times, if not all the times, when you decide to devote your life to Christ, everything around you changes, everything inside of you changes primarily, but it also affects your surroundings, like your friends, the people you hang out with, your family members, like everything changes. And that was no exception for me in 6th grade when I accepted Christ. I was very excited, you know, to tell my friends about it, all these things. I started to go through changes, like I used to curse a lot, which can be a shocker, but I used to curse a lot. I stopped cursing. You know, a lot of changes were happening in my life during this time at this tender age of 11. And I'm not gonna say this was the cause of it, but it was part of it. Because I was so vocal about my new encounter with Christ, and like at 11 I was baptized with speaking in tongues, so I would go to school and tell people that like, oh my gosh, this happens, this is a thing. I was met with ridicule by my friends in regards to this. But not only that, during this time, I guess like my friends started to change towards me. I underwent bullying about the way that I dressed, about the way that I looked, about everything about me. And you know, I started to be so frustrated with the fact that every single day I would get bullied about something that I couldn't control, like my appearance, and about something that I really just couldn't do anything about, like the clothes that I could afford. And I started to slowly adapt myself in a way where I would spend like hours to leave my house because I didn't want to be bullied in school about my hair or my shoes or my face or whatever. So slowly I started to become more self-conscious and insecure about me because of the treatment that I was receiving, because I wasn't used to receiving that treatment. And then also during that time, like the friends that were my friends stopped being my friends because they said that I was annoying. So that also, you know, played a toll in my self-confidence in a way. But I should say, yeah, these things happened, but they didn't actually fully affect me. Like I didn't start believing the things that were told to me until high school when I wasn't being bullied at all. And it manifested itself in a way where, because of my previous experience, I didn't want that to happen again in high school. So I was super like self-conscious about what I wore, how I looked, everything. When I looked in the mirror, I just didn't like what I saw because for so many years in middle school I was told that I was ugly, that I have a huge forehead, that I have a big head, that, you know, I'm annoying. So many things that I kind of had that fear of it happening again in high school. And it led to me being my own worst self-critic because now I'm already pre-assuming what people are going to think about me when they see me. You know, when I had bangs at the time, so if I ever had my bangs messed up or I had to put my bangs up, I felt so self-conscious, like, oh my gosh, everyone's probably thinking like, wow, she has a huge forehead, oh my gosh, she's so ugly, etc., etc., because of what I was used to experiencing in middle school. That's like the start of the whole self-esteem just going downhill. And I say the start because in a sense it got worse, right? So not only was I self-critical, but it got to a point where I just didn't even like looking at myself in the mirror, because looking at myself in the mirror reminded me of my flaws. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, you know, I wasn't happy with what I saw. And it was crazy for me to even fathom telling anybody this. Of course, I'm telling it now because I do not feel that way at all about myself. I've grown by the grace of God to love myself and accept myself the way God has made me. But it was a journey, because just imagine somebody telling you the same thing over and over for 3 years and not hearing any different. It becomes your own inner voice, and instead of it just being like people having their opinion about you, especially at an age where you're starting to go through these changes and look different and accept it, and people are making fun of you during this process, it's really hard. Carry on to high school, like I said, it was difficult for me to look at myself in the mirror, etc. However, I was surrounded by way better friends that I had literally prayed for and asked God for, and in a way they played a huge role in me just learning to accept myself, not love myself yet, but accept myself. So I had friends that they weren't telling me these things, that I'm ugly and that I'm this and that I'm that and that I'm annoying. Like, I had friends who genuinely were like, wow, you're so pretty, wow, you're so this, you're so that. And even though I didn't fully believe it, it helped in affirming or validating the little self-acceptance that I did have. Eventually, going on to college, I started to meet new friends, I started to meet new people, I started having different experiences on campus with people, and I was forced to grow and I was forced to be confident, because now I was delving into leadership positions. And during leadership training, I didn't know they had this thing called Diversity Day, which is when you open up to people about things in your life. You're vulnerable with your team members and you guys share things that you're going through. And like I said, I never was open about my experience with the way that I felt about myself, because it's kind of hard to tell someone, hey, I don't like myself, I don't like the way I look, I don't like anything about me, because they can't really do much about that, right? I always knew that the struggle that I had was something internal and something that I had to deal with on my own, in the sense that no matter how much people told me the opposite, like, you are pretty, you are beautiful, you are amazing, you're worthy of being here, you're worthy of having good friends, you don't believe it. And if you're someone who struggles with low self-esteem, you can relate in that no matter how many times people tell you otherwise, what you think about yourself is really what matters. Because I would have people tell me that all the time, and I would just, or not all the time, but when they would tell me, I would feel like they were just lying or saying it to make me feel good. So nobody could convince me otherwise. But when I was in this leadership training my freshman year, I finally opened up to people about it. I finally told people, like, this is what I go through, and I was met with such open arms. Like, of course, they were like, what? Like, I can't believe that, you felt that way about yourself. Like, look at you and stuff like that. But it was like, yeah, I do, and I felt like this sense of liberation in just sharing what I was going through with someone. And one of my best friends, Dominique, too, like, I remember one time I called her, like, crying, because I was like, yo, I really hate that I feel this way about myself. Because that's another thing, like, when you undergo and you go through self-esteem issues, you don't like it. Like, I haven't yet to meet someone who enjoys the fact that they don't like themselves. No one wants to look at themselves in the mirror and not like what they see. So on top of that, not only was I self-critical of myself and didn't like the way that I look and how I was and everything, but I hated that part of myself too. I hated that I hated myself. And it was such a hard reality, because I was like, I just wish I didn't feel this way. And even as a Christian, of course, there was ways that I got better and I improved, and there came to a point where I was able to look at myself in the mirror, where I was able to have my hair back and not feel self-conscious about my forehead, where I was able to, be confident in who I was for a minute. But it is a process. Like, it's like you have to slowly undo the lies, and the only way I was able to undo those lies was with knowing God's word and accepting it, because a lot of times, like, every 2 months or so, I would kind of relapse, in the sense that I would go into this self-critiquing spiral, and I would just start crying out of nowhere at home or anywhere that it would happen. And it would be like one thought of like, oh, you failed at this, and the next second it's like, oh, you suck, oh, this is it. Like, it's like this never-ending spiral of self-critiquing yourself, and it can come off as perfectionism, but it really is just self-hatred or like self self-esteem issues that were the root of those problems. But yeah, I would go into those spirals, and the only thing that would help me stop going into those spirals as deep as I would or at all was reiterating God's truth. Like, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made by God. God made me this way, you know, like he loves me even when I don't love me. He accepts me even when I don't accept me. So it wasn't until I fully believed those things that I was able to let go of those strongholds, because they are strongholds. Now when I look back and I see all this attack on my identity and who I was, and now I see all that God has revealed and prophesied over my life, and how through me I've been able to help people by the grace of God, through God, I'm like, wow, this whole time the enemy saw my purpose, knew my purpose and my potential so much more than I did, that ever since I was young he was attacking it. What's crazy is that God has been able to use this thing that was so difficult for me to go through for good, because not only am I confident in who I am in him, but I can now confidently tell other girls, I made it, you can do it too, through Christ. You know, don't forget that part, because if it wasn't through him and it wasn't because of him, I probably would still be the same, you know. And I'm not gonna say that I still don't struggle with that in a sense. Like, there are times where, you know, the devil can just put something in my mind and I just start feeling really bad about myself and go into this self-critiquing thing again. But like I said, like, prayer and remembering who God says I am, not who I say I am, not who anybody else says I am, but who he says I am, really reiterates the fact that I have no reason to not love who he made me to be. It was a difficult process. I can say that I was fully liberated like my junior year of college, honestly, because yeah, I've learned to accept myself in the way that I looked. I learned to be confident in the way that I looked, but to really live it out in every sense, in the terms of like, be confident in the roles that you take on as a leader, be confident in who you are, be confident in your classes, be okay with failing, be okay with, you know, trying something and it not working out, going outside of your comfort zone, not just staying in the safe space because you don't want to be critiqued or you don't want to fail. Like, it morphs, you know. When you go through self-esteem issues, it's not just about physical appearance, like, it's deeper, right? But when you get to the deeper issue, things can start to be resolved and you can confidently live out everything God has wanted you to live out. If this has taught me anything, is that identity is so important, because I saw the difference from believing that I was this person who's unworthy of good friends and ugly and undeserving, when I was surrounded by those people telling me that for 3 years and being bullied. It taught me that, you know, because I believed that was my identity, that's how I went about my life, especially after those 3 years in middle school, in high school. You know, even though a lot of people didn't know that I struggled with this, like, I did. I didn't like looking at myself in the mirror. However, now I feel like I can do so much more. Like, I have done so much more because I've been able, through Christ, to overcome those obstacles of self-esteem. And like I said, it's not just about appearance, because that's why we see so many celebrities who live these perfect lives, in our opinion, and look amazing, but you find out they were bulimic, or they were anorexic, or they hated the way they looked, or they were in these horrible toxic relationships. Mind you, they're like the most beautiful woman in the world, People magazine cover, stuff like that. Because it's not about this, it's about what's inside and how you see yourself. Whether you're a middle schooler going through puberty and it changes, where you're like, why do I look like this? Or you're a grown adult who's in a toxic relationship because they don't see their worth. Identity is key to everything, and our true identity is only found through Christ. And I'm so grateful that I was able to find mine in him and fully live out his purpose and continue to share his word and my experiences with you guys. That's everything in terms of my journey. Of course, there's a whole bunch of more details that I could have shared, but I feel like that's pretty much the gist of it. And if you guys want to learn more, or you have any questions for me down below, feel free to ask them. I would love to continue talking about this, because I think it's something so integral to who we are as human beings, our identity, how we view ourselves. So thank you for watching, and I really, really hoped this helped you. Bye.